Okay, so welcome back to the Digital Calm. We're into a new season, and I don't know about you, Naomi, but I'm really looking forward to getting back into the groove. It's been an age, I
It
think.
it has. It feels like it, and so much has happened, and yet so little has happened all at the same time.
Absolutely. I know we took the summer off, mainly to kind of chill out and to reflect on the previous season and to see kind of where we wanted to take the podcast next. And I'm
Mm,
sure we'll get into that in the episode as well, just to talk a little bit about that. I think the big thing for me coming out of all that reflection period is the fact that it's, still in love with the idea of creating space for people to sort of chill out and to contemplate some of the big and small questions about life, which I think is what this is about, and contemplating those questions from the point of view of gaining more insights, mental clarity, and really just a sort of overall general well-being. Um, yeah. So, what did you do at your end of the break? What were you up to? What did you do in relationship to the podcast? And how did you use that time away? Because we didn't record on a Friday or on a normal time and didn't kind of get involved in all of that. So, hopefully, well, I think the intent was that it freed up space to yeah, to get a view, a macro view of our sort of projects here.
yes, and you're absolutely right. That was our intent. Um, on what I actually did we used to go live on a Tuesday night. And what I actually did on the Tuesday nights was actually hung out with my husband. Um, and so it was just really nice to have an extra evening together where we may not have done anything specifically, but it was great for us to be able to connect and have a conversation, not quite midweek, but kind of close to midweek. So that was how I spent kind of the nights or the time we would actively be working together on the podcast. Instead of with you, I spent it with my actual lawfully married husband.
I see.
Um, but my contemplation about the podcast, yeah, very similar to you, was kind of, well, similar to you in that we obviously reflected. Um, we had obviously a couple of conversations along the way, but it was great actually that we both had the headspace to really think about, what what does this mean for us individually, and then to be able to bring that back together, and what do we want to do with it. So yeah, I mean, we kind of came up with the actually, we're really into our well-being, which is clearly certainly my driver.
Hmm.
Um, and just to be more intentional about what we're offering and how we're offering it. And
Yeah.
then obviously we've talked together and we've come up with kind of a I wouldn't say a grand plan, but we have a strategy, I suppose. We have a what's the word? Would it be a straw man to work with and see how
Yeah.
things
Well, I
go?
think there's just the evolution of the podcast as it continues to evolve as these things should do. I mean, I used the time and the space, which was great for me to, do more reading. I read some pretty cool books, which will explore across the time frame. Did a lot of writing. I've streamlined a number of systems and workflows. And I think the other thing that was valuable for me out of that, the sort of over the break, was being able to hone in on how I want to add value to the world, really. And now that we're back into the game, some of that'll start to reveal itself in the sort of coming weeks. And I think from a format point of view, just as if you were a long time listener, the format's essentially the same. I mean, we're not going to go record the podcast live every week. We may do some weeks it'll be live. If I can get the whole radio thing working, the radio streamer working, we'll we'll go live on that. Um, just so that if people did want to listen in while we were recording, that they could do. We won't record live on Mixcloud necessarily, like we were doing sort of weekly, but we do have a dedicated digital calm Mixcloud page, which we'll link that all into the sort of show notes. And we got all the spaces. So we got the Twitter set up, we got the Tumblr piece set up, websites being built. And I think all of this is leading towards beefing up this idea. The whole point of creating this space and creating a space for people to sort of chill out and contemplate these big and small questions is the real driver behind this. And we're going to talk about this issues the newsletter. We're going to talk about on this episode is the benefits of creating a contemplative practice and kind of get into the nuances between what is contemplation, how does contemplation differ from meditation, for instance, and we would in mindfulness, how does contemplation differ from mindfulness? So you got those three concepts, and they're kind of similar in some aspects, but what's the difference between the three? And then the benefits of adding a contemplative practice, I think we'll get into. Okay, so let's get into the episode. Let's get into thinking about what we want to talk about today, and let's go for it. We
Well,
might be a bit out of practice, I think.
absolutely. And I was thinking that actually, although we were saying to people who've been listening to us for a while, we're kind of changing things slightly. Actually, hopefully, we've got some new people listening to us too. So I thought it might be just worth giving kind of like an overview. And actually, because our own thoughts have evolved on what we're doing, what we're focusing on, and what we're offering, I thought it might be useful to step back for a minute and to say, well, what's Digital Calm about? We've said it's about offering a time to pause, to reflect, to kind of unplug in the middle of the week. But there's more behind it than that. So when we've been talking over the past few months, we've really been honing in on probably three main areas. And that would be well-being, self-discovery, and I would say your love of philosophy. I love it, but I have to rely on you a lot. And what we mean by that is well-being is kind of and this is sort of a work in progress explanation, but we would see well-being as things that make you happy, feel fulfilled, kind of a healthy, wealthy, and wise side of things. The self-discovery, that's about you finding knowledge for yourself. It's sense making of the world and your life and your part in it. It's very much about you uncovering things. So you might listen to what Clay and I talk about, but it's all about you going away and reflecting, or in the moment reflecting, and well, does that fit with your values? Does that fit with your beliefs? And kind of questioning so that it helps you evolve within your own thoughts. And then the philosophy, well, that's kind of that search for the purpose or the deeper meaning and I would say the greater sense of the world. And sometimes I can kind of be like Alice and I can fall down the rabbit hole and really not have a clue. And that's where I get you to pull me back on track, Clay. But
and part of pulling you back on track is remembering that the philosophy I'm into is more ancient Greek philosophy, which is about well-being, which is about self-discovery, which is about everyday living. So my favorite philosopher, of course, is Socrates, and he spent all his time in the marketplace talking to fishermen, talking to the market people. He shunned the academy. He shunned, just talking about stuff in the air somewhere. His thing was very much about how to live. I mean, if you look at most of the Greek sort of philosophy, it was about how to live. And so that actually encompasses all of that. What you've just said there, isn't it? The whole, if we think of the driving question being how to live. You've got this life. We're here for however long we're here for. How are you? What are you going to do with it? What's the best way to live? And I know we don't do morality so much here. We haven't really got into ethics and morals. But that is a branch. What is right, what's wrong, is another sort of concept Virtue was a big one, I think, from the ancient Greek philosophers. And I think, from a contemplation point of view, and this idea of taking some time out to think, and I think, I always had this, well, I have this thing, and it's probably like Thoreau with philosophy and Nietzsche too. My other favorite guy is they didn't really like academic philosophy. There was a real, and if you use that term with people now, I think that's what they tend to think of. They tend to think of academic philosophy and brains and doing the sort of rational thinking and creating arguments, where that is a stream of philosophy. Um, but in terms of its original concept, this lover of wisdom is what it translates to from the sort of Greece. And it is a lover of wisdom, how to live, what's the right way to do, what to do with the time that you hear, are all philosophical questions. And I think that's from the big picture point of view of the podcast. That's kind of the things that we explore, and we got different labels. Yes, well-being,
Mm,
self-discovery, and all these different labels, but all of it is central to what the hell am I doing here? What,
mm.
yeah, how to be a good human in the end.
How to be a good
Um,
human, yes.
yeah,
The
so
other,
no, that's great, and I think that's great, and I think again, as if people listen to some of the back catalog of the podcast, and going forward, in the stuff that we write and sort of put out, it kind of all fits into that space, I think. Yeah.
absolutely. And I was thinking as you were talking then that apart from the fact that I love seeing your face light up when you talk about Socrates, it's amazing actually. You start to sparkle. It really is about actually what are we learning, what are we understanding as we go through life, and I, would use the term probably practical wisdom. And maybe it's not practical, maybe it's applied wisdom. So, we're of an age and a stage where we've lived quite a large chunk of life and we understand ourselves to a certain extent. And then we're kind of taking that knowledge and applying it and trying to still keep learning and growing and evolving. And I think that's what drives both of us. We don't want to stagnate. We do want to just keep seeing what's out there, and essentially, this is kind of our journey, and we want to share that as an offering to help, or to give other people the space to also find their own journey, by kind of joining in with ours.
Absolutely. All right. So, what are we talking about in this episode?
So, as you introduced it beautifully before, you were saying, well, what we've titled it is The Art of Contemplation. So, contemplation, I love my dictionary definitions. So, I pulled my very old Oxford English Reference Dictionary off the shelf, and contemplate could be to survey with the eyes or in the mind. It could also be to regard, in brackets, an event as possible. Intend, to have as one's purpose, or to meditate. And I really liked all four of those because I think you could pick them out and have them very separately as your explanation. But actually, I think all four of those are very relevant to our topic of the art of contemplation.
Yeah, and if I was defining contemplation, as I think of it as a practice, for me, it's about studying or observing something carefully and then thinking deeply about it. So and hence why we do here, we say, take a pause, and I'll talk about a process. So we're going to talk about the benefits of contemplation, and I'll outline sort of my contemplation practice and a process that you could follow in doing that. So, that's I go if you go do a search on contemplation online, you'll come across a number of different things. But the aspect of contemplation, as we're talking about it here, is about that sort of deep thinking about something, that slowing down. There can be analytic thinking, and you can do the sort of logic thing, but contemplation goes a little bit more that it's more pensive, it's more thinking deep about a subject and looking for the connections that that will come out of that. And sometimes the contemplation, you put a lot of stuff in the brain and it's percolating. Um, and contemplation can happen in different spaces. It doesn't always need to be that I'm going to go sit out in the garden and sit still. Sometimes it's in the shower, or sometimes it's while you're driving. I like to do my coffee contemplation. So,
Mm.
to create space to have contemplation. Sometimes to make not to make it grandiose, and I got to carve out this, huge swath of time in my day to do it. I do the coffee contemplations. We all kind of sit down and have a cup of coffee or a tea or some kind of drink, and it's in that space. I'll dedicate one of my coffee drinks, however the length of time it takes me to drink that coffee. That's my contemplation time. And I'll talk about some techniques for how to go from the contemplation. How do you connect those? How do you look, the sort of dots and the insights and various ways of sort of um, get to the benefits of what contemplation then brings for you. But I mean, do you have an active contemplative practice, or do you do meditation and mindfulness? And I think there's a distinct difference
There
between the
is.
three. And some people do all three. Um, I think I tend more to do the contemplation bit. Every now and then I'll do some mindfulness and meditation, but my main gig is contemplation.
Yeah, and I'm smiling because obviously we've both done our notes individually, and we've kind of both had those kind of big chunks, if you like, that we're looking at. So, do I have a practice? No, I don't actually. And one of the things that I was thinking when I was, kind of preparing for the recording was, for the podcast, was actually I don't contemplate. I have things ticking away in the back of my head. So I suppose I do contemplate, but not in, well, frankly, not in a very effective way. And that was a real eye opener. So obviously, I started to contemplate contemplation because we were talking about it. And that it was a real kind of, it stopped me in my tracks when I went, because I'm not giving myself a proper space in which to do that. Actually, it's sort of leaking throughout my life and isn't really working. It's not effective. So that was really interesting.
How could you say that? You do it
I
when you do the
know,
podcast.
I
You do.
know.
This is our contemplation time now.
Well, but remember, we haven't done it for what, 6 weeks maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
Um, and so that was a real insight. And I mean, to me, I agree. You're absolutely right. There is a big difference between contemplation and meditation and mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I think kind of, these things have been around and in the public arena now for long enough that people are talking about them and starting to understand a difference. And in terms of meditation, I mean, you start with meditation. You can talk about a guided meditation. You can talk about simply sitting there and following your breath, or stilling the mind, or imagining the clouds passing by. There's so many different types of meditation.
Yeah. So all that talk about coffee made me thirsty for coffee, so I had to go get a coffee during a break, even though I missed my song.
You
Although I,
did, you did. I
wow.
wondered where you'd gone.
Yeah, no, I needed a coffee, but I've been listening. Well, I was listening to the song earlier. I was listening to the whole of the playlist actually earlier, which I tend to do to make sure it has the right feel and flow. So yeah, but I needed a coffee anyway. So, and as I was getting the coffee, one of the things I was thinking about is why do we do the music? So I mean, the
Mm,
podcasting, most podcasts are just talk podcasts, and we made a decision at some point in time when we used to be branded as the Wisdom Experience that we wanted to switch to kind of a radio format, I guess it was that we were looking at, and playing music and then chat. And so why music? I know why I have music, just because I kind of love music, and I find that it creates, if I want to drift away, if I want to have a deep feeling about something or through something, or using a vehicle to journey, music is just a space, and it's so many varieties and forms of music that I can use for different purposes. I use music to, get pumped up at the gym when I'm going. So it's a different kind of music that I'm playing there than if I want to, feel all, and, I don't know, what do you call it?
Relaxed or
Relaxed. I've got
mm,
that. If I want to feel combative or, sort of, activist status. I know music is just everything, I guess, for me anyway. I don't know about you, but it's the two things in life for me apart from family is books and music. I don't care about
mm.
anything else really. So
No, and I used to feel the same about music, and then I kind of got um, out of the habit once I had children because my eldest son is deaf. When he was a baby, we became aware that we actually needed to keep the environment incredibly quiet to give him every chance to learn to speak. And so it was very kind of conscious that instead of me having music playing, or I play music, I play the piano, or just singing to myself, having the radio on, all of that kind of stopped. And I kind of got into a place where I hadn't realized actually just the negative effect that was causing on me.
at some
Um,
point I read somewhere that we can't live without music. And now when they say music, even as simple as the heartbeat is a
mm,
beat,
exactly.
which I find, and if you think about, I don't know, think about how important music is to society and everything. Like if you try to watch when the difference between the music that's in the soundtrack and the sound design of a movie has again it has if you change that up it just makes things feel different and um yeah, it's a strange concept, the whole music thing. I mean, I haven't gotten to the bottom of it. I got a couple of books that I want to read that explores in depth about our connection to music and what that connection might be. But I haven't gotten around to reading them, but I'm interested in finding out that bit. But yeah,
That would be really interesting. And maybe something that we could dive in a little bit deeper in another episode.
yeah, no,
One of
absolutely.
the things that you were just saying was, okay, so why did we choose music? And as you said, we'd been doing the Wisdom Experience podcast. We'd done 20 odd episodes of that. They are still available online at the wisdomexperiencepodcast.co.uk. You can go and listen to those anytime you choose. And then we were ready to try something different because we are about growth and evolution and kind of testing ourselves and stretching ourselves, as well as just trying out things because we want to find, I use the term effective quite a lot. We wanted to find something that, or we want to make sure that what we're doing is effective. So we introduced music, which, if you remember, I was pretty nervous about actually. I didn't know if I would be able to keep a thread of conversation going through playing music. There was all sorts that for some reason it threw me into a bit of a spin, and that's even with you doing all the technical side of it. But what turned out, if you remember, was that I absolutely adore the music. I loved the music. It was a way that you reintroduced me to music, actually. And I was listening to songs that either I'd never heard before. So they were really fresh, even if they were from the 80s, they were fresh to me. And some of that is because obviously we were on different continents all those years ago. So I hadn't heard of some of the people you grew up with. And some of them were just things that I had listened to but hadn't heard for many years. And I felt it really changed the dynamic of what we were doing. And in fact, we ended up having some quite lively conversations, and energetic conversations, I should say, which were not necessarily very much about digital calm. So what we've done now, and we're talking quite a lot, but the idea is that if this is a contemplative space, we've introduced the music. We're going to try having two songs back to back to really give you who's listening time to sit there, and if you wanted to journal or to ask yourself a question or to write down some thoughts that are coming to your mind that you want to clear from the day, that's why we're now playing those two songs back to back. And tonight's tunes are particularly good and in flow for that kind of contemplation space.
Yeah, and I think it's the music just is something to sit back to and sort of listen to, and some of the fans of the podcast, it's a way for them to unwind. And in the same way, and generally I find that the people who are into the podcast as we have it now, they like music, and they like to talk bit. So it's the best of both kind of worlds. So I can listen to some tunes that I can relax to, but also listen to the conversation and participate in the conversation either actively when we do it live or again, afterwards, where you spend time sort of with your journal, which we'll talk about a little bit later on when I talk about the sort of process of my sort of contemplation practice. Now, one of the things, and I guess the question that that I was exploring when I was thinking about contemplation, the contemplation practices, why do I do it? And I think it's something I've always done, although I wouldn't have known, I wouldn't have used the word contemplation back in the day, but it's played a huge part in I think my life, my development. As you know, I'm just so much into my books and my connection with knowledge, and just wanting to know everything that there ever was in the world that you could know. Just the books for me is just a great adventure. And so part of that, as I'm wrestling with concepts that I learn from what I'm reading, it is to go into that deep thinking aspect and just mull over something. And it's just usually just, it can be just a single concept. Um, and, and just to, and one of my things I do is I pace around when I'm contemplating and talk out loud. So someone looking on the outside will probably think I'm some kind of nut bar because I'm walking, and I'm talking to myself or the universe or whoever. But I almost, for me, add emotion is a big part of my sort of contemplative practice. Is moving around, whether that's pacing around the room or going for an extended walk. In fact, I get my best insights from contemplative walking. When I go for a walk, um, and I'm almost, I say mindlessly walking, but I'm in deep thought. So I'm not actually paying that much attention to the environment and what's around me. I'm just into this rhythm, and in that rhythm of walking, loosens more connections and synapses, and everything's kind of firing on multiple cylinders and dimensions for me, and it's where I gain a lot of insights from doing it. So I think that's one of the main reasons I do it is for the insights that come out of contemplation.
Yeah, and those insights, if I say, what do they do for you? I mean, I know that's a huge question because obviously it would depend on what the insights are, but can you give us a couple of examples of?
Yeah, so insights. So for me, I always look at things as one, like this is a one big giant journey that we're on. And, we're always looking for different clues and signs and omens in terms of, as guides to where I'm going. What does everything mean? What does what I'm doing mean in the greater scheme of things of my life? And these insights for me are just little puzzle pieces that help you to stitch that together. So if you were, trying to figure out what your purpose is, for instance, if that was something you were sort of contemplating or and wanting to figure out that, so you'll through these sessions you get little tiny insights, and sometimes they're huge epiphanies, and sometimes they're just a really minor thing, but that minor thing slots into the greater puzzle, and then you've got one more piece of the puzzle. So for me, the what comes out of that and the benefits of these insights is it's helping me to complete that puzzle piece on whatever it is that I'm kind of working to. And it's, there's this it's the connections and the associative thinking that comes out of it. So if you believe in this concept that everything touches everything else, contemplation is a way to gain insight into the interconnectivity of all things. So as you're contemplating, um, it's almost like you're getting there's different patterns you begin to notice, there's different associations you notice, and then you notice the connections between one thought to another thought to another thought. And, we talk about the subconscious mind and the power of that. And contemplation is looking into that mirror and seeing what's reflected back out and all it's there. And some of it doesn't even make sense, but then out of one of these sessions, you'll get some small piece. Like I even had one today. In fact, I ended up being late to the gym because when these come, I have to capture them because it just came and I couldn't turn off the tap, and so it was a half an hour late getting to the gym.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, it's yeah, yeah. I think that's one of the huge things for me anyway. Um, and if we, yeah, well, look, unless you got another follow-on question, I'll go to another couple of songs here, and then we can come back and just maybe outline some of the benefits of contemplation. That'd be helpful.
Okay. Yeah, I think it would. I really, I mean, you've kind of tantalized us a little bit by saying you're going to talk about your process, and I
Oh yeah,
really
no, I'll
want to
do
know
that
what
too.
your
Yeah,
process is. So,
yeah.
maybe let's talk about your process so that people have got a how to, which that I'm obviously always a big fan of, and then we can kind of come to benefits. But I was sort of slightly chuckling to myself, partly because with what you're sharing, absolutely, like this is you through and through. But also I remembered you posted something, I think in your coffee contemplations or in the Wisdom Cafe over on Facebook, which is our group over there, and I think you posted something about notice the connections that are going on this week, or the things that seem or that are connected or could be connected, even if not at first sort of sight. And I have to admit that I've been chuckling to myself, Riley, I will say, when my car gave me a warning yesterday that apparently there's something up with my driver's airbag. And then my printer has been playing up at home and I've had a flashing green light on there. And then today in the car, not just as the airbag obviously still needs to be looked at, which I have booked it in, but then I have it's called an eco start stop button, which is an A with a green kind of circle around it. And that was also playing up. And I was thinking, wow, there you go. Those are my connections that I need to work on this week.
Yeah,
Oh, my technology is failing.
yeah,
That made me
yes.
chuckle.
Or maybe, yeah, no, exactly. There's something that'll be there.
It is. And I know you're about to move on, but we're talking about the art of contemplation. And I love how in the podcast, we talk and then what we're talking about is reflected in the lyrics or it's extended in the lyrics, or and then that in turn will then fuel our next train of thought. And again, you may know these songs intimately or not. I really know very few of them, but I just love how they integrate and they give this space for letting the brain settle, for letting the mind calm down, and for letting those thoughts start to flow. And I love that.
Awesome. All right. So you wanted to know about my process in
Yes,
terms of
spill the
contemplation
beans.
practice. All right. So I haven't counted out how many years. I guess maybe it's 9, but I mean it's. I mean the first part of it is creating pause moments. So when I talked about doing my coffee contemplations, that not every cup of coffee I'll do a contemplation session, but generally in the morning. In fact, the first my first act of life is my little contemplation over a cup of coffee as I'm coming back into the world, as I'm connecting whatever dreams I've had and catching those in the journal, or just simply coming back to life. And I just, whatever I went to bed, maybe if I was putting something in the percolator to sleep on, that's that time. That's literally, I go, you know, do the toilet run, and then it's coffee, contemplation, the wake up one. And I won't say it's waking up because I'm awake, as in I wake up naturally. So that's just my, which is why I don't, which is why I get up. One of the reasons I get up early is because I can have that time. Like, people who sleep right up to, as soon as you get up, you got to be in action mode. 'Cause you got to get dressed, you got to do this, you got to. So, I mean, I'm up by, I mean, this morning I was up at 4:30. Um, but I can ease into the day. I'm not in any hurry, and there's nobody asking for anything, and there's no demands on my time at that time of the day. Nobody else is awake, so there's no demands on my time. So I can ease into my day, and usually, generally, I was doing 5 to 7 was my sort of clay time, but because I've got a lot of stuff else going on, I've moved my workout to 6 in the morning. So 4:30 to 6 is now my sort of time for the sort of contemplation aspect. So it's creating pauses, whether those small pauses, whether like you're driving, whether you're having a cup of coffee, or whether you are cooking, whether you're going for a walk to the grocery store, whether you're standing in line, waiting for something, whether you're on a hold. So you create the pauses and you look for the pauses, or I say create as, but you can look. But for me, it's just create the pauses, and you can have your big grand ones, like over the weekend. I guess it was where we were out camping. So I'm up and looking at the sunrise, and that's an example of one where you say, okay, well, I've got this giant space, and I'm out here in nature, so I can make the giant pause, but they're not all that. So I have big pauses, little pauses, micro pauses, um, throughout the sort of day. And then the other thing I do is set an intention to explore. And I think maybe one of the difference here, and I think this is an important step about setting the intentions, because otherwise it could just be daydreaming, which is nothing wrong with daydreaming. You get a lot of insights from daydreaming and active imagination aspect as well. We just have a random sort of daydream. But this, for me, for the contemplation, you set an intention to explore. So I'm putting something into the subconscious and saying, okay, infinite subconscious that's connected to all things in all times and places, past, present, and future, if you're into the blockchain theory. Um, and I have that intention so that those associations that are about to happen can happen specifically for that intention. And whenever I do a contemplation walk, I'm going on a walk for specifically for contemplation, um, the journey of the walk become, I set the intention at the beginning, so throughout the entirety of the walk, um, the magic can happen, and by the time I come around to the end of that, I come away with an insight or two. And the second bit, or third one is sort of quiet the conscious mind. And I know this may sound a little bit like meditation, but not quite. Meditation, you are quiet. There's lots of chatter, and you're seeing that as the chatter that you're trying to calm down in meditation, and it's an inward um, push or feel in the meditation space. Mindfulness is a presence aspect. So you quieten the mind to be present in the moment and to notice um, the present being. And contemplation does a little bit of both of those, but it's an active mindset. So I'm actively thinking about a particular intention that I've set. So I'm trying to quiet out the normal chatter, I guess, of, I gotta go cook this, do that, or whatever. but the mind isn't in the inward be still mode. The mind is in active mode. Um, the next step in that for me is tune into the free associations of your subconscious mind. So as you're in that sort of state, it's just noticing the things that come up, and they don't have to make sense. I think that's a big clue for me. Is that they don't have to make sense, and part of the practice is beginning to just accept what comes. So you just whatever don't because sometimes it'll be very clear how it's connected. Sometimes it won't. So it's just about tuning into those free associations, and then um, the next step in that then is to allow your intuition then to connect the dots and look for the insights between these associations of things that may have come up during the session. And I think so. Intuition, and I can't remember if we've done an episode or not on intuition, but intuition plays a huge part of this as well in this process. Next part of that process then is to reflect on the insights gained. So the dots have been connected. Intuition's done its thing, and you got these eureka moments. Sometimes they're big eureka moments. Sometimes they're epiphanies, and sometimes they're just, just small insights. As I said earlier, they're just pieces of a puzzle to a larger puzzle. And here's the part that's, I guess you have to find your way to this, but it's documenting your insights is the next part of it. And whether you want to catch that in a journal, I always carry a recorder of some type with me on my walks, so I can just talk into it, or even downstairs, in the morning. I'll turn on the recorder and record some it, so I don't have to try and remember things. I'll just use the recorder to do that. You could document it with video, but just document the insights so that you have a way, and do it in a system to which you can, journal helps because it's got the date, the time, and that kind of thing. So you can, and if you get into the habit of tagging your entries, you can go. And I've been using this new um, uh, app called Logseg, which is great, and Obsidian is another one. They both work similar, but one of the things that it has is basically it's like mapping your brain. So if I bring up that view, I see all these little dots and circles, and maybe I can take a screenshot and share it in this. But it looks like your brain. But you can. And then when you click on it, you click on one dot, then it shows you all the other connections to that one thought that you had. You know, in August, and you see all the other things that's connected to it. But this is why it's good to have a good tagging system in doing it, so that it's easy to see those connections there visually, have a model of it. And then here comes the important part, and we talk about when we get into the benefits of contemplation is you convert the insights into action. And that's, I think, again, one of the huge differentiators between meditation, mindfulness, and this contemplation is it's designed for you to convert insights into action. So you're going to go do something with these insights, and then last, just documenting your progress. So just keeping the feel for from one day to the next in terms of whatever particular journey that you're on. So documenting that process, and that's it.
And I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I have a variety of questions.
All
My
right. Well, hold
first
on.
one
Hold on
is,
to those
oh,
questions because
oh,
that was
oh,
a long.
oh,
That was a long segment. Hang on to the questions. I'll play one tune, and then
oh.
then you can come
Just
back and
one. Okay.
you can ask me all these questions.
Which is great, actually, because that means that people can actually percolate that for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Gotcha. All right. What are your questions? Fire away.
So I think my first reaction is actually something that I sent over to you in our chat, which was actually to hear your process has suddenly put a lot of our conversations over the past 2 years kind of not into perspective, but it explains so much. So, although I journal, I don't journal in, I don't have a process. Sometimes I set an intention. So, it might be, okay, I'm going to answer this question, but I haven't got a full process like you've had. I might, yeah, just that's actually been quite mind blowing. So I think, you were saying that actually this is a huge part of your daily routine. And now you've explained it to all of us in this process way. I get it. It's vital. I can now feel, you often talk about is, do you want this as much as you need air? It's like, I so get it now. You've explained the process. So did this process kind of come about by kind of trial and error? Did you learn it from somebody? Did you pick it up from the zillion of books that you've read? Yeah. How's it kind of come about?
Yeah, so it's just evolved over time, I think. So yeah, but I didn't take it from any particular book or anything, but I'm sure it's a combination of lots of things that I read. Marcus Aurelius, he talks a lot about contemplation, the Stoic philosopher. Yeah, and I think it's probably because it's my way of working out things as well. So that's why it's kind of developed over the time. So again, it's like, um, I do have that kind of lone wolfish nature. So I spend a lot of time on these journeys, and so it's kind of developed over a space of time. Um, yeah, and then sometimes you changing things up or adding some things to the sort of um, mix to see what else might come out in these. So, but that's the core process. Whereas sometimes I do add some different elements to it, but that's the that's the core process.
Well,
Um,
and I think it's a fantastic cool process. I mean, I sort of think actually, if I did this for, even 7 days, but if I did this for 21 days or 28 days on the trot, I would be in a very different place than I am now. So I'm excited to kind of try this. So I was scribbling notes like mad as you were sharing. Um, and as I said, it's really interesting because there's bits of that I do, but it's that process, it's the putting it together from start to end.
and I think that's
I
why
love
I'm
that.
saying it's like a practice, isn't it? So we talk about, you got your martial arts practice or your meditation practice, or so this is a contemplation practice. So it's part of a process. It's part of a practice, basically. They get up and it's like exercise. Here is the practice,
Mm.
and this is the steps of it, and practicing every day.
And I think, yeah, I'm really kind of so excited to hear it. There was one bit that I wanted to ask a little bit more about, which is the tagging entries.
Yeah.
Now, talk to us about that. How do you tag? And I don't mean kind of physically, how do you tag your entries, or practically, but how would you create a tag? What would you know how to tag it? Does
Yeah,
that
well,
make sense?
yeah. All the tag is a reference point. Like hashtags on Twitter is an example of a tag. In fact, most programs that you use that have tagging, they'll use hashtag as the means to make the tag. And it is based off the concept that the brain is an associative tool. That's what mind maps are. Mind maps work because the brain is just has all these different interconnections that's just there, and you throw a concept and then things just start coming. So it's like the mind map. Just that's how the brain works. And so when you tag things, you just tag them. Like I tagged, like on my notes using a log tag, I've got digital calm, which has its own sort of page. So it's like a wiki. So everything that I ever write about digital calm will all be in one place. And then I tagged it contemplation. So I've got that makes a page of contemplation. And then so everything that I ever write, just like you do on Tumblr, we do those tags at the bottom. I do that in hopefully, if whatever note taking system you have, you can make tags. Otherwise, you need to get a different program. Because I can go now and go contemplation, and it'll bring up every thought I ever had on contemplation. Will all come into the space. I mean, and so it's just that. It's like so the tag is just what's the main idea in that space. I mean, I got, and the tags can just go crazy. Just people like, if I go and I got a Socrates one, I click on Socrates, every thought that I would have had that came out of either talking about him or writing about him or reading something of his, all of that will come to me. So that way, in your note taking system, I can just focus on taking the notes. I don't have to, like, if you use folders, then you got to have a folder. Then I got to remember what folder it goes in and put it into that particular folder. And that becomes very hierarchical and stiff. Whereas with this system, you just take the note. And then afterwards, you add a tag to it. And um, then the system does the rest. So, I got here, I mean, I'm just looking down my list of tags and things I have, chat bots. I can click on it, and then every note I ever wrote about chat bots comes up. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's really, really helpful. Yeah, again, you learn so much on different levels.
Yeah, and I think, I suppose we need to talk about benefits of
Yes, I was
contemplation. So
just about to
yeah,
say.
why, why have a contemplation practice to begin with? Some of the benefits then of contemplation, and this is just stuff I picked up from reading in psychology and the like. Um, calming the mind, it calms the mind and the spirit, relieves worry and stress. Is another one. I think the big one for me out of here is it allows space for the mind to wander. That's the one of the main components for me is the mind just gets to go on this big giant journey. Another benefit is clarifying your thinking, generating new ideas with this sort of associative thinking. Um, and these last three here that I'm talking about, so allowing the mind to wander, clarifying your thinking and generating new ideas, and then this other one about creating space to find solutions to problems, especially problems that you're stuck on. So, I mean, you can try and squeeze it out of your brain analytically, and you're just working really hard to try and squeeze an answer. Um, but if you want to take advantage of the power of the mind, it's put it in the percolator, go for a walk, and then go through that process of associative thinking, looking for the patterns and the connections, and you'll find the solution to the problem that you are. And then one that's I talked about earlier, and I was saying doing what I'm doing to bring value to the world. It also creates space to reflect on your life and the world around you, and your connection to the world, or how you're interconnected with the world. So back to that concept of everything's connected to everything else, or everything touches everything else. If you're into your sort of alchemy, that everything is connected to everything else. Help you to clarify we talk about some practical things, helps you to clarify your priorities. And then, of course, in the space that we like to play in, it's overall beneficial to your sort of well-being. So your happiness, creativity, all stems from, cultivating an active contemplation process.
Yes, and I think that's the key thing. I think it all stems from not just the fact that you're contemplating, but I think the fact that you have a process, yes, that might change, yes, it might flex, but the fact you have a process beneath what you're doing. So I might sit down and think, okay, how am I going to work through this, whatever this may be, that's, kind of preying on my mind. Or I might, like, you were saying, I might be driving and I come to a red light, and just whilst that red light's on, I just consciously calm everything down. But this process that allows you to actually kind of take whatever's burbling away and actually kind of go through a process and come out with action at the end. I love that. I think that would be just so inspiring. Kind of, it could be really inspiring, but there's something about it, and I can't quite find the word that I want. But I just think it's really helpful to move people along in their day-to-day life, but with that much deeper meaning. So it's kind of finding that connection to yourself, but connecting to the bigger world at the same time.
Yeah, looking for all those connections. Let's go to a tune and then we'll come back and get ready to do our sort of conclusions and wrap up. Um, okay, so conclusions about contemplations. You start. What did you
So I
take it
think,
away?
okay, sorry, I did literally. Um, so, obviously we've talked about what contemplation is. We've talked about how it is similar but different to meditation and mindfulness. And I think that my conclusion is very much that contemplation, you can do, you could contemplate things in a navel gazing kind of way, which of course is a phrase that's used to mean that you don't necessarily do anything with the insights that you uncover, shall we say, or the connections that you make. Whereas actually, what we're talking about is using contemplation in a very considered way, but in a way, using a process in a way that's freeing up the mind to actually think in a much freer and greater sense than when we're kind of stuck in the moment but not connected to it.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, what I would offer to people is to just, you mentioned about trying to, doing a 28-day thing. So I would offer to people to do a contemplation challenge. And in fact, maybe
Mm,
we should start one.
let's do it.
We just we can get people to sign up for a contemplation challenge, and we'll do 30-day contemplation challenge. And then we can sort of have some prompts and things like that for people to do, and then we can kind of connect and to share that. But just to get into the habit of doing contemplation on a daily basis, um, is something that I would definitely impress on people. So I think the big thing for me in terms of a conclusion on that is, so for me, as you probably gathered from this, contemplation is a huge part of my life and my sort of daily sort of routine. So it's kind of second nature for me to sort of do. Um, but it's been great to sort of explore, and like I've never written that process down. It was only in preparation for this podcast that I think, okay, well, I've got to explain what it is that I do. And so this preparation for the podcast got me to actually write out the sort of process. So that's been a huge benefit for me, just the fact that I've actually taking the time to write it out. And it's kind of like having your gym things. I can go to the gym because I've been lifting forever and I have all these routines in my head. I can just go and come up with a program in my head, just like that because I just do it. Um, Versus someone needing to have a personal trainer and they create a program and all that kind of stuff. But this has helped me to pull that out, and hopefully I can share this along to others as well. But I think, yeah, at the very minimum, let's get this 30-day contemplation challenge um, going. So, yeah, so that's the gig. Okay, so I think that's probably brings us right about nicely to sort of 90-minute spot here. Some things I think to add from an admin point of view. One, as we mentioned, we have, well, this will go up on Mixcloud It's mixcloud.com/digitalcom. And then you can listen to the episode there. When we do the show notes, we'll make the playlist available. So if you want to, connect with the sort of playlist, that'll be there with it as well. We're on Twitter, so we're on Twitter at digitalcom is our Twitter handle. So, and I think that's a good place to connect up with us if you want to sort of keep and keep the engagement going and find out what we're doing and what we're pushing out. There is there's a site coming, so we're building a website for it. But in lieu of that, and maybe despite of that, we do have I could call it a newsletter, but you can subscribe to the podcast via email, basically, and that's probably your best bet because then you get the episode delivered to your inbox when it's published. And yeah, that's you don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to the website. You don't have to go anywhere. It'll come to you. So that's the best way to enjoy it.
And where do people go to sign up for that, Clay?
Well, they go to Twitter. It's a pinned tweet there. So they go to
Okay. So
Twitter
people go
slash
to Twitter.
digitalcom. Yeah. I know we put it in our Facebook group, but I didn't pin it. It's not a pinned post. So if you want to go to it, just go to our Twitter. And
But just in case, because as you know, not everybody loves Twitter like you do. So in the Facebook group, is that the Wisdom Cafe group?
yeah, but then I'll have to look for it in there if they want to
Well,
find it. I mean, I can
you
pin
know
it.
me, I'm more of a Facebook user than a Twitter person. I'd rather go there. And if I can't find it, leave a message. So
Yeah, the other
that's what I
thing
always say to
I'm
people.
going to say, yeah, I know that on the Twitter also, you'll find a link to the Mixcloud page as well. So you don't have to sign up for Twitter. That's the other beauty of it. If you just go to Twitter and Digital Calm, you can get what you need. You don't actually have to have an account. Whereas if you're not a Facebook user,
Yeah, you can't
you're
get
not
into it.
you're not getting
Absolutely.
into the group. You see what I'm saying? So this is more public, I guess. So that's the best way, easiest way. Get on that mailing list, and you don't have to worry about Twitter, Facebook, or anything else. You just go to old-fashioned email, baby.
Absolutely.
Is your best bet. Um, and then we'll let you know when the site's up and you can be in that space. But even when the site's up, email is the best game in town. And I think that's probably about it, really. Unless you got any other things that you want to add to the equation.
I kind of know. I mean, there's as you say, there's the places to come and hang out with us, and really we're trying to just work out where how we can make that sort of smoother for people who want to just enjoy this conversation and to join in the conversation around the episodes. Our aim is to do one a week. We're going to do a series of 6, and then we'll probably take a break for a week, but if you're listening to them on a regular basis, you'll know that because we'll let you know. But yeah, we are
I suppose
planning
the
on
other thing
doing another one next week.
we hadn't mentioned was the Tumblr page, didn't we? So there's also
Oh yeah,
Tumblr.
that was
Yeah.
it. Tumblr, exactly. So how can it's Digital Calm at Tumblr if people are on Tumblr?
Yeah. So for again, if you can access Tumblr without having to be a member of Tumblr, um, although it encourages you to get an account. But you can find us at Tumblr, and there it's Tumblr. It's digitalcalmblog.tumblr.com.
Digital Calm blog
Yeah.
dot tumblr dot com.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another space. But as I said, just get on the mailing list and then you don't have to belong to any social network. It's just much more easier that way.
Ah,
Okay. And I think that'll be a wrap. And thanks for listening in. And I doubt anyone caught it on the radio stream because I didn't push it out that it was on there. But in case anyone does have it bookmarked and it pinged you, that the station was broadcasting something out. Thanks for tuning in live. And we're going to, I think now that that process works and I kind of figured that bit out, I think even when we record these, I'll have it playing across the radio streamer for those that want to participate or listen to it live, and then they can comment with us via Twitter in terms of if you want to actively participate in the session. All right.
All
So
right.
that's it. That's us.